Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very, very special webinar this Saturday evening. My name is Rohini Vij, and I'm the founder of NutSpace. NutSpace is working with stories, using stories to build life skills in children. With me today, I have a very special guest. We have with us RamG Vallath, who is the author of this wonderful book here with me, Active Parenting: How to Raise Children with Boundless Potential. Before we get started, I'd like you all to know a little bit about Ramji. So I'm going to read about him from his book. Ramji Vallath, better known as Ram Gopal Vallath, better known as Ramji Vallath, is an IITian, a tech company co-founder, a much sought after motivational speaker, and the author of the best-selling autobiography From Ouch to Oops. He has inspired over 50,000 children with his talks, and his life story is a chapter in one of the 8th class textbooks for CBSE students. As a keynote speaker, Ramji has addressed over 1 lakh people across the globe and helped them become more resilient, more positive, happier, and more successful. Ramji, it's such an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and I'm very excited about our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Rohini. The pleasure is completely mine. I think I've heard about what NutSpace does, and I think we have very, very similar values. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Ramji. So let's dive into the conversation. I have read your story and I'm truly inspired, and I would like it if you could share your story today with our audience as well.
So my story is a whole book, actually. Yeah? So I shall condense it to 2 minutes and tell you. so, uh, so I had pretty much everything going for myself when I was young. Got into IIT with a fantastic rank. From IIT, I graduated and then did my MBA, got into a very good job, had a fantastic career, and very enviable career, I should say, and reached a very, very senior position in corporate India at a very young age. And that's when I started having an autoimmune condition, which over a period of about 7 years gradually crippled me. And by the time I was 41, I was completely paralyzed. I could hardly move. In fact, I could not move my hands or legs even 1 centimeter. The condition was then diagnosed, and I was treated with various different kinds of medication, which all had very, very negative side effects. None of those medications really worked, and I went to the US and got into a clinical trial where they completely rebooted my body, and the new immune system I had sort of stopped attacking my body because I had an autoimmune condition. So I recovered a lot of my lost muscles and strength and things like that. Then I reinvented my life as an author, then went on to become a motivational speaker. So it's many, many interesting steps I had to take one after the other. Today, I find myself, in fact, I'm very glad to tell everybody proudly that I'm the happiest person I have met in my life, because I've done everything possible to convert my life into something truly, truly positive, which helps as many people as possible. So, my aim is to touch 1 million lives positively. That's where I am now.
How absolutely wonderful. While listening to your story, I actually got goosebumps. What kept you going? It must have been really tough. And what is it that kept you going? And I'm sure you had moments that really sort of pulled you down. And how did you cope?
So, I'm a strong believer that people can train their mind to be able to overcome almost everything in life. It also helped tremendously that I had an extremely supportive family, from my parents to my wife and children. They were all incredibly supportive. My wife took on a lot of load on her own shoulders through this entire thing, looking after myself, looking after the family, earning money for the family, putting kids through education. That's on one side. On the other side, I had the ability to keep looking for solutions rather than wallowing in self-pity. And I suppose, you can train your mind to do that. And over a period of time, you become better and better at it. So I've had several setbacks after that, one after the other. But each of these I was able to conquer because I was able to do this act of looking for solutions, learning new things, learning new skills, going with the flow, playing to my strengths. Each of these actually helped. And today I find myself in a position where I'm able to actually impart positive, positive nature, resilience to as many people as I can, and which is quite a large number of people actually. So
It's amazing. And, I'm glad that you spoke about a positive mindset and resilience. So, your book, and I'm so glad I read it. And, your book is full of personal anecdotes and lovely stories from your growing up years. And even you, when, your kids were growing up and you as parents and all of that. So, every chapter of your life has beautifully been captured in this. But what especially touched my heart was when I was reading the prologue and, those really vulnerable moments that you've described with your father at the hospital. And so I'm just going to read a little bit, an excerpt from the prologue of your book here
yeah.
for our audience. As I write this book, I want to carry the thread that my father started and imbued with his own unique colors and multiply it a millionfold so that together we leave a wonderful and positive mark on this universe. This book is both for the both of us, and he's very much alive for me as I write this, guiding me, and hopefully will be immortalized through what I share here. That is what great parents do. They live on for centuries after their physical selves depart, through the thoughts and values that they have bequeathed to their children. Their influence is boundless across generations. It's really beautiful the way you have described the impact, the positive impact of parents and how it's boundless through generations. Could you talk a little bit about a positive mindset and how a parent can equip themselves and their children with one?
So the story behind writing this book itself is actually that first prologue which I had put in the book, which started with my father being hospitalized in ICU with a problem with his heart valve, which finally ended up in his passing away very early. He was everything to me in a sense. He was a guru. He was my guiding light. He was my best friend. We had an incredibly positive and wonderful relationship between the two of us. So we had so many jokes we could crack with each other. One sentence we could say, and the whole, the other person would understand exactly what one is talking about. He was, as a parent, I think he was very, very focused and always aware that he was a parent, and whatever he did will have an impact on his children. And that's in fact why I coined this book as active parenting. It's a parent knowing that every action of theirs will have an impact on their children, even if it doesn't directly involve the child just observing what the parent does will have an impact. So one of the things that my father tried to do was always role model the right values to us, and desist from negative comments, negative emotions as much as possible. Obviously, people are human, but if you're aware that every action of yours will have an impact on your children, and your most important aim in life is to bring up children to be wonderful citizens, then you will always be conscious that you need to be a good person. So being a good parent actually makes you a wonderful person to start with. And that's what my father always used to role model. And right, I mean, so he had watched me going through incredibly tough times, and he was there as a rock of Gibraltar for me, always giving without intruding into my life, always being there to discuss, to motivate, to make me feel positive. And then when he was hospitalized, and it looked like he was in very, very serious condition in the ICU. He was on a ventilator, and he couldn't speak. But I was allowed these 5 minutes every day to go and meet him. And in those 5 minutes, my aim was to try and imbue him with as much positivity and desire to continue living. so that I wanted him to fight his own condition and come out. So one of the things I thought of to get him motivated was to tell him that I want to write a book along with him. And so I told him that I want to write my next project I've thought of, and I want to do it along with you. It'll be a joint project. We'll write a book on parenting. And I want to share with the rest of the world what you did for us as a parent, and how we can give the same message to thousands and tens of thousands of people. And I could see that it moved him a lot, because I could hear the heartbeat monitoring machine. I could hear the heartbeat going up substantially when I told him this. He was very excited with it. Unfortunately, that was not enough for him to recover from his illness, and he passed away. But when I wrote the book, I could really feel him sitting next to me, and that's how we wrote the book.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing such a personal story with us. And it's amazing the way you described how and what active parenting really means, and how every action of a parent is being noticed by their child. And I like the way you said that you want to be a good parent, you must be a good human, and being a good parent makes you a good human. I think that's really beautifully put. Um, I want to talk a little bit about how there are all kinds of children, right? And the same kind of recipe, I'm taking the word from your book, cannot work for every child. So can there be can there be a recipe for good parenting or active parenting?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And then, so when I started off writing the book, pretty much the idea was to talk about the way my parents parented us, and then how I ended up parenting my children. So that is very restricted to a family, right? And the conditions of our family and the background, etc., is about the same. Now, if I want this to be a book which a large number of people can connect with and appreciate, I realized that that is not enough. And that's when, originally the book was supposed to have come out about 4 years back. So I shelved the idea at that point in time, and I wanted to do it full justice. So I went about doing a lot of research on child psychology. In fact, I enrolled for a diploma in child psychology, understood the basics of that, understood the basics of positive psychology. I interacted with a lot of psychologists and understood several aspects of parenting. I interviewed about a couple of dozens of parents to understand what their challenges are, what kind of a person they want to bring up their children to be, and then created a set of attributes which are important for children to become. I interviewed a lot of people who have become successful in life, and interviewed them in terms of figuring out what are the attributes or qualities that made them successful, and what did their parents do to build those attributes in them. So the book finally, when it came out 4 more years later, it was a culmination of all this research. So it was no longer about one family, one child, or one group of people. It had a framework of principles and strategies which can be applicable across the board to 99% of the people. I would still leave out 1% because there are exceptional circumstances, or children with very special needs, or parents who come from very specific backgrounds, where it may not 100% be applicable. But almost all the people that we know of would be able to connect to these strategies and age appropriate techniques which I have described, and be able to benefit hugely from that. Even that 1%, at the end of the day, it's about how to make your child a better person and better equipped to handle the vagaries of life. And that, I think, it would do even for that final 1% to a certain extent.
Do you think that there is in order to be an active parent, and with the strategies that you said, you put into your book, and all that research that you went through, the interviews that you conducted, do you think somewhere, when as parents we are trying to bring up a child with a good strong value system, help them become resilient, we're also, as you mentioned, improving ourselves, do you think somewhere it puts a kind of pressure on the parent that, okay, I need to be always aware of what I'm doing? um I mean, how does it work? Like, can parents do this without feeling pressurized? Can they plan, think in a, in a way without feeling pressurized, that, okay, I want to be the best here, and sort of not compromise on that, and yet have a beautiful relationship with their child?
So, in fact, it actually does the exact opposite. Um, Being an active parent not only reduces the stress of parenting, it also makes it a complete joyride. And the way it does is, most parents actually go from one challenge to the other, one issue to the other, try and fix the issue at that particular point in time without actually thinking through in terms of what could be the long term repercussions of a specific act that they're doing. Whereas if you take one step back and try to figure out what are the qualities that you want to actually build in a child, how do you make them responsible for their own lives, and take ownership for their own lives? And what should that life finally unfold to become? And then go with that plan in mind. Then what happens is, actually all these issues which keep cropping up, which put mental pressure and stress and strain in the relationship and make life a miserable hell, actually just vanish. And you end up having a wonderful and beautiful relationship with your child, where both of you respect and trust each other so much, and communication becomes very easy both ways. And then it is so much easier for them to then take ownership for their own lives with support from you at the back, without you having to interfere with every day-to-day action of theirs, and just be available for them when they need support. So that entire transformation happens when you become an active parent. So rather than put parents under pressure, it makes the entire journey of parenting a joyride. And that's the transformation that happens.
And I think that's a wonderful thing, because if it's a joyride, then there is no pressure, not on the child, not on the parents,
Exactly.
none
Yeah.
whatsoever, and then the whole journey becomes a beautiful one. I like the way you've you mentioned right now that, help the child, be there for the child as a guiding light, but then eventually equip the child to be independent and make independent decisions.
Yeah.
On that note, there is an acronym that you've coined, SHARP. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about SHARP?
Yeah. So Rohini, what I'll do is, first I'll talk about the three principles of active parenting, because that sort of guides to the leads to SHARP.
Yes.
So there are three fundamental principles in active parenting. Number one is to be proactive, which you have already brought out in the earlier question. To know that every challenge that you face from a child is actually a symptom and not the root cause. And to be able to address the root cause proactively and build the right qualities and attributes in children proactively, so that the root cause is addressed and hence these issues do not keep cropping up. So that's the first principle of active parenting. So it's being proactive rather than being reactive. That's one. The second principle is to know that um, every interaction with a child is an opportunity to build those qualities in the children. And sometimes it also means that the opportunity would be to not do anything actively, just observe and be there for the child, and let the child really take care of their own problem and learn how to solve their own problems. So knowing that every interaction with the child is an opportunity to build these qualities, that's the second principle. The third principle is that equip the child to be able to take responsibility for themselves, so that parents do not have to micromanage their lives. And so with these three things, the point is then, what are the attributes and qualities that parents need to build in their children proactively? And SHARP is actually an acronym for those five attributes, which I believe are fundamental to becoming successful in life. The first one in SHARP, I will start with the first one being H, actually, because that's, I think, the most fundamental one. That is happiness. So the idea is to equip the child to be happy through the journey of life, and enjoy life, enjoy every moment of life. That is the first H that stands for. Happiness is a very important aspect of life, because finally, whatever we do in life, whether it is to earn lots of money, get into great positions, hold a great profession, have a great family, build great relationships, all that is finally for in pursuit of happiness. And uh, Apart from that, I mean, being an end goal by itself, happiness also helps you in becoming more successful in professional life, for example. Happy people attract many more people to support them. So professionally, they become more successful, and then that leads to further happiness. So happiness is is something which feeds on itself. The second one is what I call authenticity. And in my opinion, being a genuine, authentic, transparent person is essential for life, because if you're not genuine and you have to always put up a front or be artificial, that puts so much of strain on one's mind to be always something what you are not, to be always projecting yourself as something else. And that just makes you feel very negative, always putting pressure. And the other thing is, people who are genuine and authentic are trusted by others. And the more authentic you are, the more you are trusted, and hence the more support you will get in life. So again, authentic people do well professionally. They do well in family life. They have great relationships, which all again adds to happiness. So authenticity is very important. Resilience, obviously, resilience. I don't have to say the importance of resilience. Resilience is the ability to quickly bounce back from downturns in life or setbacks in life. And I can tell you from my own experience that resilience has really, really helped me. So resilience is important, because nobody is going to have a cakewalk all their lives. There is also always going to be some ups and downs. How you manage the downs and convert them to ups, that is resilience. And then purpose driven. P stands for purpose. The ability to have a larger purpose in life and go towards that every step of the way. Whatever you do should take you one step closer to your purpose. Whether it is a large goal, like, for example, I have kept a purpose for myself of touching 1 million lives positively, or it can be a shorter goal. For a child, it can be doing well in this year's subjects and getting good marks, or being good at a particular game, or a particular instrument, or whatever, right? But make children feel connected towards a purpose that they can drive towards that. Or it can be a very large purpose, like wanting to change the society for a better place. Whatever it is, that purpose is something which again makes people feel driven. It gives direction, so that people are not wandering all over the place. And that aspect itself reduces confusion in their minds, makes them more happy. So being purpose driven is important. And then the last one is what S of sharp, which is social consciousness. So the ability to think just beyond oneself, know that you are part of a larger society, and then you need to contribute to the larger society, including obeying the rules and regulations of the society that you are in, or the laws of the land, and be a good citizen. All that is being part of being socially conscious. And the more socially conscious you are, again, the more compassionate and helpful you are to your society, the happier you become as a person. Ultimately, all this entire sharp is to make somebody a happy individual who makes oneself happy, makes others around them happy, and makes the larger society happy. That's what it is.
That's wonderful. When you were talking about purpose, and how it could be something which is really maybe like far-fetched or big or whatever, but if you're purpose driven, then you're sort of moving towards it in a structured manner. Is it, sometimes as a parent, one may have their own aspirations for their children, and sometimes one may end up putting their own aspirations on their children, where they make it the purpose of their child to probably achieve something that they didn't, or they couldn't, or they would like the child to. So how would you differentiate? Because see, the parents are well meaning, no such thing about, but every parent has an aspiration for the child. So how do you make them that independent that they can identify their own purpose?
Yeah, so that's an extremely important point, what you brought up, because I think one of the big mistakes that many parents make is to put um, their own purpose on their children, their own goals on the children, and really drive children towards those goals rather than understanding what the child's own goal is, or their own propensity, or their own motives are. And that leads to tremendous amount of dissonance. And I've seen children who have completely lost their way in life because the parent drove them in a particular direction and the children had no say in the matter. They ended up doing a profession which they hated. And at the age of some 30, 35, then they change their profession and start all over again when they feel that they have independence. And that is terrible. So the basic building block of this, how to correct it, is to have respect for the child, respect for the knowledge that the child is a complete individual by themselves, and they are not a part of you, they are not an extension of you, but they are a completely independent individual who have their own likes, dislikes. They live in a generation which is so much removed from your own generation, maybe 3 generations removed, right? I mean, every 7 to 8 years is today a generation. So they are 3 to 4 generations removed from you, and they are being brought up in a society which is vastly different from the society that you are brought up in. Their opportunities ahead of them are far more than what you can even comprehend, because you don't know what is going to happen in the future. Future is changing so fast. So lay off. Understand what the child's strengths are, and their motives and their inclinations, and support them unconditionally. Try to help them become the best of what they want to do, and give them a sense of purpose so that they do not falter in that direction. Whatever is the direction they want to, let them feel a sense of purpose towards that. Then equip them with a lot of other things like, problem solving skills, critical thinking, creativity, risk taking ability, things, lifelong learning, things which are essential qualities with which you can always make your life a success, irrespective of which direction you're taking. And so if you can equip a child with all these and treat them as individuals with respect and let them go in their direction, then you will know that they will succeed fairly at the end of the day.
Right. There's another point that I wanted to pick up from the acronym SHARP, and you spoke a lot about happiness and how everything sums up to happiness. And especially in the socially conscious part, where one is sort of there for the society and a little more selfless as a citizen. There's something more, and I feel that would sort of add, and you have also covered that: kindness, gratitude, compassion. So, are there any exercises or activities that parents or families can do together to, help the child become, kind,
Compassionate and kind.
compassionate? Yes.
Yeah. So I have actually seen some parents do some of these very well. Uh, one of the things that they can do is to volunteer for certain activities, or volunteer part of their time to do certain things along with the child. So, for example, it would be going to orphanages, spending time with the children there, helping them with their academics, or telling them stories, or giving them, equipping them better for their own lives, and let the child be part of that and understand how privileged they are to be have been born in a family which has a lot more than what these children have. And the moment that they realize that they have so much of privilege, and they're lucky to have that privilege, gratitude comes in. And obviously, seeing the parents support individuals which hugely vulnerable, and people who have difficult lives, then compassion also becomes part of their lives. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect is one very simple thing. That is, as parents, you role model compassion to people who are around you. Like, for example, many of us in India are very lucky to have domestic workers with us, right? I mean, you have people who manage their household, or you have a driver sometimes. Uh, how do you treat them and look at their problems, ask them what the issues they are facing, on challenges they are facing on a regular basis, support them through it? When children see those kind of things, they will become a lot more compassionate. And finally, how compassionate are parents towards the children? And how do you, I mean, when a child is going through difficulty, does the parent come from a very judgy kind of a direction, or do they spend time trying to support the child, understand the child? Each of the empathy is actually a way of showing compassion. So if you can do those and role model that to your child, then children will not automatically become compassionate individuals when they grow up.
Very, very well said. It is, by the end of the day, how you role model it. And yes, so as parents, we are also but human. And there is a quote again that I'd like to read out from the book. Says Doust, something we so often fail to remember is that parents are not born with degrees in parenting. They're also first timers and experimenting themselves. So yeah, I mean, we've spoken about what all parents can do, but I mean, I'm sure that we make mistakes, right? And is there something that maybe, if you want to share, maybe a personal anecdote where maybe you failed as a parent, or made a mistake, and how did you handle that situation?
I have failed dozens of times as a parent. And I think it's perfectly understandable and perfectly normal for parents to make mistakes. And the good thing is that it's okay to let the child know that you made mistakes. And in fact, the more you do that, the more vulnerable you yourself show yourself to be, the more they will connect with you, the more they will appreciate you, and the more open they will be to confess their mistakes with you. Mistakes I have made. Okay, uh, so I have, for example, once I have lost my patience with my 4-year-old son and really whacked him, and and I hit him some 4 or 5 times, and then I felt so bad about it. The first thing I did, I mean, I actually sat and cried for some time for having lost my cool so badly and have lost control over myself. Then I sat with him and apologized. At 4 years, I don't know how much he understood, but I hugged him. I really apologized and hugged him and gave him so much of warmth after that that I think he forgot about it and sort of eventually moved on. There was another time when I, over some very stupid, silly thing, like, what is the food which was made for dinner, I lost my cool with my wife, saying that, this is the thing I hate, and why is the maid always making something I hate? And I threw a tantrum. And I not only threw a tantrum, I threw my laptop also, which I was holding at that time. And I threw my laptop, luckily, on a bed, knowing fully well that nothing will happen to it. It was just a show of frustration. And after about 10 minutes, I was aghast at this behavior that I had shown. I was being so disrespectful to my wife in front of my children. And they were watching this entire show, and they're like completely stunned at how stupid I was. Uh, After half an hour, I completely felt ashamed. I came and sat there, and I ate whatever food was prepared, which I didn't like, politely, and told all of them that I'm a complete idiot and I'm so sorry for the display of stupidity. And it became then a joke where, we keep talking about this, how Bengan actually brings out the worst in me.
Yeah, talking about jokes and humor, and I think that's very important in parenting, to have a humorous approach to it. And like you said, at both times where you lost your cool, and you apologized, and of course maybe told yourself that you'll probably never do it again, and maybe never did, and sort of role modeling and all of that we spoke about. But at the same time, adding humor, I think, is something that really livens up the entire relationship and helps us also, children sort of overcome their inhibitions and connect better with parents, and likewise for parents with children as well. Having said that, I think one can really be great friends with their children. And I think that's again a wonderful way to actively parent your child. But is it possible to be your child's best friend and at the same time define boundaries? You don't want to be, taken advantage of, and yet you want to be friendly and you want to be available.
So, for this, one should actually understand the role of a best friend. The role of the best friend is not to be indulgent of everything that your friend does, right? It is to also, at times, show the mirror and show the way and firmly deny certain things which are not good for the friend. And parenting is exactly the same. In fact, so I firmly believe that you should become your child's best friend, and they should trust you fully and 100%. They should have no inhibitions about opening up whatever mistakes they are making, whatever errors of judgment that they've had with you openly. That's important, because otherwise you will never be able to guide them properly. You will be sitting in a fool's heaven thinking that they are perfect, whereas they might be doing lots of things which you are not aware of. If you are their best friend, they would tell you things what is happening in their lives, and you will have a chance to guide them rather than being judgmental, to guide them as friends and help them make the right decisions. So being a friend is essential. And when you're a best friend, what it also does is, as a best friend, um, you have the freedom then to guide them without them feeling that you are intruding into their autonomy. So it's easier to actually draw boundaries when you're a best friend. Uh, of course, you should always keep in mind that you're a parent, and as a parent, it is your duty sometime to ensure that they do not do certain things, or that they are pushed to do certain things, right? So drawing boundaries is very important. And if you do not draw boundaries, your children actually will resent you. In fact, I have done a lot of surveys of children, and one thing that has come out is that they do seek a certain level of boundaries from their parents, so that they are not going running all over the place, and they feel that their parents are loving them by setting boundaries. Otherwise, my parent doesn't give a damn about me. I'm going ahead and doing whatever, and they don't even bother. They're not even bothered. That's the way it'll come out. So
Right.
it is easier actually to set boundaries when you're best friends, and you can do that without any tension or strain that is happening in the relationship.
That's great. And I think somebody's posted a question, while we were having that conversation. What if the child is smarter than me? And there have been instances where he has been right and I have been wrong. So how do we handle that?
Welcome to the world of parents. Every parent will at several times feel that their children are smarter, and it is a great thing, right? I'm so glad my children are so much smarter than me on so many fronts. They're so much more aware. They're so much more clued in on to what is right and what is wrong. Their moral compass is fantastic, much better than mine was at that age. And I think my father also felt that about me when I was growing up. So it is a great thing that your children are smarter than you, and if they have corrected you, the best thing to do is to acknowledge it and say, "Wow, thank you so much for showing the way, and I really appreciate the fact that you have such independent thinking and ability to discern what is right and wrong," and accept it with a lot of grace and appreciate it. In fact, that your children are able to correct you, uh, and if you think that that's not the way, then logically have a discussion about it, rationally, logically, without feeling emotional, saying that, "Oh my God, I am being disrespected by them correcting me." That is not the purpose at all, right? I mean, when your child is actually pointing out something that you've done which is a mistake, or uh, finding out a logical flaw in one of your thinking or your worldview, it just shows that you've done a great job as a parent in making them feel independent and giving them the respect of being individuals in their own rights.
And being able to express themselves so clearly.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Right, right. So there is another question here, and thank you, parents, for sharing your questions as we speak, and we will be, answering a lot of questions, through, So there is one question that I want to take up right now, and that is how to deal with kids being more and more aggressive these days.
So there are the first thing is to figure out root causes for aggression. And I strongly feel some of the root causes are because children are very, very hooked on sometimes to their gadgets and their social media and things like that, which actually have several negative impacts in their abilities. For example, it reduces their social skills, it reduces their emotional balance, it makes some, I mean, smaller children throw tantrums, older children become rude and misbehave and disrespectful, etc. And it also impacts their cognitive skills, their ability to learn academics better. So there are so many negative impacts of that. So I would urge you to look at that as possibly one of the root causes of aggressive behavior. And if it is, then it is really important to draw boundaries. It is easier to draw the boundary, as I said, if you have a wonderful relationship with your child, and you have, in fact, you spend time with them uh, to have active quality time with them to distract their minds away from this. So parents who do activities together with their children, and there can be dozens of activities for younger children. For example, it can be doing some gardening together or cooking together or doing house chores together as some kind of a competition between each other and making fun of each other and things like that. I mean, a light-hearted moments which you share with children, or even telling them stories and listening to their stories, or as they grow up, it is to spend dinner time together, talking about the world affairs, world views, politics, current affairs, understanding their pop culture, maybe watching the kind of shows that they watch, which you are totally, completely removed from, but then spending the time to actually understand their pop culture and then having an intelligent conversations with them around that. These are the kind of things parents can do uh, to create a bond with the children, and these are positive bonds. What this does is that it will give you the ability and the freedom to actually tell your child when they are being rude or aggressive, and tell them how it made you feel. uh, and the moment you tell them how a particular act of them made you feel, I think the understanding of that and the acceptance of that will be better than just saying, "Don't do this. This is bad." It is so much better to actually say that when you did this, this is how I felt. I felt belittled. I felt bad. I felt sad. Whatever it is, right? And openly confront them with that, and ask them not to repeat that. It'll be so much easier to do that.
Right.
So yes, aggressive behavior needs to be nipped in the bud, from the root causes, also to building great relationship with them so that you can actually tell them when you go through something. The worst thing that you can do is to get into passive aggression, sulk with your child, or not talk to them because they were disrespectful to you. At the end of the day, you are the adult in the relationship. You need to behave like the adult. You need to be more mature. You need to swallow your pride at times, and then you need to start the conversation. You can't wait for them to say sorry first before you start the conversation. Ego should be the last thing in your mind when you're dealing with your child.
Very well said. I think we need to be the parent and put
Adult. Yeah.
right, the adult there in the relationship. It's interesting how you mentioned using stories, with to deal with, say, probably a possible situation that a parent is facing, for instance, aggression. So there's an entire chapter in your book on how stories make the best lessons, and I am a professional storyteller, and I was really happy to see that chapter in there. I wanted to know your relationship with stories in your growing up years. The book is full of lots of lovely stories, but maybe, we have limited time here, but maybe if you could share your relationship with stories in your growing up years, and also, when you were on the other side as parents, as a parent, when it came to your children, how have you used stories in order to, actively parent and have a positive mindset and, yeah.
So I would not be exaggerating if I say stories made me. I am made by stories. So when I was a child, my parents, both of them actually spent a lot of time telling us various kinds of stories. My mother was good at telling a lot of mythological stories, and I mean, they would. My mother would try to tell stories which have some moral, and most of the mythological stories do have very strong moral ground in that. So some of these values get very clearly uh, internalized when you listen to stories. The advantage of stories is that you can impart values to children during using stories without being moralistic, without sounding pedantic, without being, without talking down to them.
Without sermonizing.
Yeah, without exact sermonizing. That's the word I was looking for. Without sermonizing, right? So they just pick up, and you don't even have to say this is the moral of the story. They just pick it up, and they are smart, right? They will internalize it. Next time when a similar situation happens, then they will know exactly how to behave, which is the right behavior. So that is the advantage of stories. So a lot of mythological stories, whether it's I should not say mythological, and Puranas and our stories, and whether it's whichever religion you are in, whether it's Hindu, Christian, Islam, all of them have wonderful stories which can impart great values to children without overtly talking about the value. That's one. Number two is the other thing that stories do is that it really develops the imagination and creativity in children. Because when you're telling stories, the whole world is being built in their minds. They are like imagining the whole thing. And the more descriptive your story, the more descriptive the imagination is. And it makes them much more powerful as uh, when they grow up, because they can in turn paint great pictures of visions to people around them. So that's a other advantage of stories. Stories also give wider perspective to children, because they, sitting here, you can talk about somebody in Antarctica to South America to South Africa to whatever, right? I mean, and you're being transported from one place to the other and learning, and as a sponge, you can absorb whatever your parents are telling you. And so my father used to tell us a lot of stories about the spirit, the human spirit triumphing over challenges. And I think that actually helped me overcome so many challenges in my life with a very happy frame of mind. The other thing that my father did, and he used to, I studied in a Malayalam medium school. I never spoke English till I reached my college. So I had never spoken a sentence in English before that. But he would translate stories of PG Vados and tell us those stories in Malayalam. Now, PG Vados is the funniest person, author, the most humorous author that I have come across. The stories are amazing, and it just makes you look at the absurd situations in any situation. And for me, I think I was able to overcome all my difficulties with a very happy frame of mind, because I could laugh at anything. In fact, one of the my quotes in from my other book is, when the going gets tough, the tough get humorous.
Yes.
Right. So the ability to laugh at your life, ability to laugh at your situation and find humor in any situation, that really strengthens you as an individual. So parents need to tell a lot of stories with a lot of humor. They can tell creative stories, they can tell imaginative stories, they can tell stories with morals, whatever it is, just keep telling stories to children. Today, CEOs spend 10, 15 lakhs learning to tell stories so that they can enthuse their teams. You, as a parent, you just do that to your children. They will become great storytellers when they grow up. Every one of my talks is a story today. And I get paid some enormous amount of money from corporates. I do it free to schools, but from corporates, I charge money. And that's great, right? For my children, the one thing I wanted to do was to make them feel, to make them be individuals who can laugh. So I used to tell them, and I could spin these stories. I could just sit for 1 hour with them and just spin a story which will keep on going on, going on, going on for 1 hour. Characters coming in, characters going out, all kinds of weird characters, absurd characters. Even today, my kids are 23 and 21. Even today, they remember stories which I have told them 15 years back. and the magical moments that it brought to them. And as they grew up, the one thing that I did was I kept telling them about the difficulties that I had faced in going through these tough times, and how what are the things I did to try to overcome them. So parents then can, as they grow up, you can tell them your real life stories, the challenges you're facing at work, for example, and the decisions that you took in a particular circumstance, and why did you take that decision, what was your thinking, what prompted you, what are the kind of different dimensions you had to balance out to take a decision. Those kind of complex things, when you tell your children, they will relate to it, they will become great. My father used to tell me that when I joined my profession at the age of 23, I already had 37 years of experience, because his father used to tell him all the stories that he had done, had as a professional. So it is our responsibility to bequeath all that knowledge to our children through stories. And the more you tell it through stories, without moralizing, without sermonizing, the more it gets absorbed beautifully.
Lovely. And I'm a very happy person today because that's exactly what I talk about all the time. I think we should now move to our questions. We have a few minutes left now. So there is a question on the screen which I'll read out. There was a generation of spare the rod and spoil the child. Then can encourage them to not criticize them and overtly love them. I'm not sure what the person's trying to
I
ask,
think
but
I think the question is, what is the balance between how much you can be tough with the child and how much room you need to give them. So spare the rod and spoil the child was the original thinking. Now it is, you can't even criticize a child, then they will feel bad. And that I have come across, for example, Facebook groups where parents say that it is not good for parents to restrict their children's screen viewing, because that is putting a restriction on them. Parents should never put restrictions. I think that is stupid, because at the end of the day, you are parent, and the child doesn't really know which is the best thing for them in life. You have to guide them, and the best way to guide them is to be their best friend and guide them gently. So yes, you need to be gentle with them, but you have to be firm at times. And when you're firm, you need to be consistently firm on the same issue, the same way every single time, so that they know that this is a boundary, and they should not cross the boundary. So I mean, you should not criticize a child, but you can criticize an action of the child, and that's very different. If you criticize a child saying that you're a duffer, or you're useless, or I don't think you have the intelligence to do this, or you're too weak to do this, and things like that, yes, then it is a huge negative impact on the child's ability, confidence, self-confidence, self-worth, and things like that. But if you are saying that I'm not happy with the way you have practiced for this particular thing, or I'm not happy with the way you prepared for this, what do you think you could have done better? How do you think you could have managed this better? What could you have got done to get better marks? And make them look at the lacunae in their preparation, or their things which they could have controlled. I think it's perfectly okay. I think that's what parents should do. So that's my answer to this question, which I think was the question.
Right. And there's another question here, and I'd like to quickly read it. So it says, my 6-year-old is very shy when in public. At home, she's always sharing her views openly, but she completely freezes when her teacher asks her to say something. How can I help her overcome her inhibitions?
So I think, again, it'll be a good idea to look at the possible root causes why a child like that is shy in public. Sometimes, I mean, and I would like to talk about this concept called growth mindset out here. Growth mindset is a belief that any ability can be built, and if you work hard enough at it. As opposed to that is a fixed mindset, where there's a belief that you are just born with a certain level of ability, and then whatever you do, that's the level of ability you have. People who are manifesting fixed mindset typically are scared of moving out of their comfort zone because they think that they will be judged for their fixed level of ability. And if they're judged for their fixed level of ability and then they fail in something, then they will be laughed at and they will be considered as losers. Whereas those with growth mindset always take on new challenges. They try to do things which they've never done before. Because even if they fail, they know that they can improve themselves and become better at it. So I think one of the things that one can do is to always praise the effort of the child rather than a specific action. Parents who actually keep praising a child for having achieved something or their talent or their intelligence or their looks, etc., are doing a disservice to the child because they are then scared of appearing less than what they think they are, and others making fun of them.
I think that's a great point because I have a linked question to what you just said. I think the question is, I think my child is gifted when it comes to solving the Rubik's Cube. We love to talk about his talent and successes to our relatives and friends. However, lately we have noticed that all this praise is making him overconfident. We are worried. Should we not praise him? And how should we acknowledge his talent?
In fact, this has a double whammy. One is that makes a person overconfident and a little full of themselves. That's one. The other problem is that a failure will make this person completely then withdraw. A failure in anything. If somebody is constantly told you are very bright, you are intelligent, my God, and things like that, and then they go and get a 60% instead of a 90% in an exam, suddenly they will feel, oh my God, that's it, my intelligence is there only, and then they will stop attempting it. They'll start hating that subject, rather than if you constantly tell them that I really like the amount you put into solving to understanding the Rubik's Cube. You really understood the basics of it by getting into the bottom of it. You put in so much of effort into this. You praise the effort. Then even if they fail later on in some subject or some whatever endeavor, they will go back to the drawing board and then figure out how much more effort they need to put in, what strategies that they can employ to win. And that is what parents should do.
Lovely. I want to now, take questions as many as I can because we are running out of time now. So there's this interesting question that's come up on Facebook now. What are your views on how parents should handle bullying in school? You must have read about that child from DPS who committed suicide. Very sad. In fact, just before getting into the webinar, I read about it. And I think it's a very important question because recently I had read about another child in the US, aged 12, who committed suicide because of getting bullied. And now it's happened here and it's happening ever so often. So how do we handle this?
I think I go back to the basic, which is if you have a relationship which is non-judgmental, trusting each other, great bond with your child, the child would actually come and confess to you or tell you that this is happening. And as a parent, then it's your responsibility to sit with the child, make them understand how their self-worth is not defined by others around them. And there are all kinds of people who make up the world, and give examples and make them understand that they need to focus on their own strengths rather than what a bully tells them or a bunch of people outside of them tells them. So the first thing is to have a relationship which is strong enough for the children to come and talk to them about it.
I want to ask something. So sorry for interrupting you but I wanted to just ask this right here. You say that have a relationship where you have an open communication and, where the child is trusting you. But what if, in the growing up years, like in the early years, the parents didn't have that kind of a relationship, but now they have become aware that this is what I should have done back then. I've not done it, but my child is already a teenager. Now, how do I handle that now at this stage?
So and I have come across this several times, and that is a very, very real problem. Just remember, it is never too late. It is always easier to have done it from early childhood. If you don't have it, it is never too late. What you need to do is you need to identify moments where there is a connect which is happening with your child, and then keep maximizing those moments and try to make those moments happen. So, for example, can you spend time in understanding their pop culture? Invest time. Your child may be watching specific shows on Netflix or TV or YouTube or whatever it is, right? You invest some time in seeing those, and then strike up a conversation when you have time. Casually talk about one of those characters in that, and it'll. I mean, this is one way. I'm just giving an example, or the kind of music they listen to. You invest time in understanding the music, the writers, the composers, the singers, and then you have a conversation with them. Make them feel that, hey, you are not so bad. You are also a reasonably cool parent. Make them feel that. Spend time in connecting with their friends. I mean, you cannot immediately all of a sudden say, no, I want to meet your friends. I want to become their friends. Take these moments of connection, try to increase these moments of connection. Use these moments of connection to slightly expand your relationship with them, and then slowly draw them in, reel them in little at a time, including then connecting with their friends, making their friends feel, hey, your parents are so cool because they're accepting and they're so open-minded. So be less judgmental, understand their point of view. If you want debate with them rather than judge them or put them down for their worldviews, understand that, so these are the ways you can slowly build up the relationship. And it is never too late. You can always do that.
It's never too late. That's a
Yeah.
wonderful takeaway. I'm going to take the last question now. There are so many questions, but we have to pick now. So this is the last question. It's a challenge now that both the parents are working and not able to spend a lot of time with their children. Most of us are living in nuclear setups and kids don't have grandparent time. How can one overcome this?
So I think it is a myth to say that you don't have enough time. You can always find time. It is a challenge for you to, first of all, organize your time in such a way that there is always a 1 hour at least that you can spend together as a family every day, and during weekends 4 or 5 hours together as a family. Having dinner together is one great idea, and it is surprising that thousands of parents I have surveyed, about 25% of them do not even have one meal a day, one meal a day together as a family, which I think is very sad. It is not impossible to arrange that. Number one. Number two is both parents are working, and at least one of them can take turns on an alternate day basis or whatever it is to spend time with children. So one person goes to work early, comes back early, spends time in the evenings with children, and the next day the other person does that. But at least one parent, ideally both parents together, but at least one parent can spend quality time with children. It is possible. And most importantly, that 1 hour that you get, do not touch your phones, do not touch your laptops, do not look at the TV together. Just spend time in building a relationship. And building a relationship with talking about yourself, talking about your vulnerabilities, talking about the mistakes you made, then they will be more open to talking about their mistakes, their problems, their challenges. Talk about world things, current affairs, talk about books you have read, whatever, just keep widening their perspective, building a great relationship. Each of these will pay humongous amount of returns when they grow up.
Thank you so much for answering that so beautifully. And that brings us to the end of this session. Ramji, I've had a wonderful time chatting with you today, and I really enjoyed myself. I'm glad that we got a lot of viewers as well and a lot of questions. But as a parent, I've also taken away a lot from your book and from today's talk. So before we end, I'd like to share this once again with the parents, everybody who's attending this webinar. This is the book, Active Parenting, How to Raise Children with Boundless Potential. Lots of lovely anecdotes, stories, tips from RamG Vallath. Thank you so much, Ramji, for being here today. Thank you for taking all the questions and answering them so patiently. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rohini. I had a wonderful time and wish all the best to yourself on your wonderful endeavors, and to all parents who are watching this. Do reach out on my social media, etc., if you have any doubts, and I'll be very happy to help in any way.
Right, we've been putting the links here where you can buy the book. So you may take a look at this link. The link will be shared even in the description on YouTube and Facebook. You can buy the book from there. And yes, you can follow Ramji. We've shared all his social media handles. And yes, thank you so much for being here and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.